उसके लिए ना there's a Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Good evening. I hope that I'm audible. I hope that I'm audible to you. I think they are saying okay. So I hope that your paper has went really well in the prelims 2025. Most of the things that we've been teaching you have been of full use, and we are very excited to decode the prelims paper. I'm Richa Sharma and I'm accompanied by Mr. Tejasvi, who is also the AIR 308, soon going to serve our nation as an IAS officer. So we'll be decoding what has worked in this year's paper, what were the surprise elements, and what are the important themes that you can catch upon in order to see what is actually UPSC asking. So talking about the first few questions, the first few topics that we have decoded for you. First is the emphasis. So what UPSC is really emphasized upon in the year of 2025 were the following things. First of all, obviously the conceptual knowledge was put to a check. And more importantly, there were sections like polity and economy where this conceptual knowledge was asked in a little bit more depth. And alongside, we also analyzed that they were application based. For example, the question in which fiscal deficit, primary deficit, revenue deficit were to be calculated. The second one is, what was the weightage of the conventional areas and the unconventional areas? So most of the question was actually derived from a lot of conventional areas, especially science and tech, geography, from basic standard books, but there was little bit unconventionality as well. So can you elaborate on that, the unconventional parts?
What I found during the paper analysis is that your economy, they have shifted towards the unconventional questions in terms of the factual numericals. Earlier, it used to be very easy numericals in terms of the monetary supply per se, the questions. But this time, they have asked you to actually calculate with the given, the numerical values. Suppose there was a question on the gross primary deficit per se also, and also the unconventional question in terms of the reports. The reports were actually the questions pertaining to the reports were very factual in nature, like the World Bank report, etc. So I found them unconventional per se.
Right, and the fact that most of the questions were made application based, and there were elements of 2021 paper where related to chess and kho-kho, so these also got re-emerged in this year's paper. That also added a little bit of unconventionality, but if we were to divide it in percentage, I guess 70% of the paper was very much conventional. The next is whether the paper was factual or whether the paper was conceptual. So it was actually a hybrid, a mix of both. But I would say that it was more conceptual, more biased towards asking concepts. For example, geography, the subject matter which I take, for environment as well, concepts were, I think, more helpful. In polity as well, right? But there were factual elements. So could you find any factual element there?
Yes. So as I previously told, that reports were very factual in nature. But I still will say that UPSC is digging much deep in terms of the conceptual analysis of your, say, polity paper. But factual knowledge, and so history is more or less factual. But there also we saw, I think, 2 to 3 questions only, which were very much in current affairs. But others, as we will see in preceding slides, that succeeding slides, that it will be like they were derived from the standard sources per se.
Yeah, and the question paper especially was also made easier by the history section, because history questions were not very difficult. They were something that we've been reading in NCRTs and basic books, right?
Yes.
So history was of help. Talking about elimination skills, so they have been of good use because of the nature of options that were created. So let's say there were many questions, we'll be discussing them as well, where if you get to eliminate just one statement out of the 4 statements, you will eventually come to the right answer. So elimination skills were also found to be of good use. And talking about the options type, so I think there was a hybrid of it, because last year there were 3 statement questions, especially geography, so similar repetition was found. And then there was only 3 type of questions. Alongside, the question paper was made a little bit easier with those kind of options, where 1, 1, 2, 3. So those options were
Where
asked.
you can easily eliminate the
Yeah.
one and you can get to the correct answer directly.
The second thing is, what was the score of current affairs and what was the weightage of current affair. So topics like environment and science and tech could be very easily done if you would have been good at current affairs. Questions were directly picked from very predictive topics of current affair. Defense and in fact sports section could also be answered very well if you were well versed with the current affairs. However, what is your opinion about polity, economy and history over there?
So, as I told, that the current affairs section in polity is reduced because the questions were directly from the statutory bodies, regulatory bodies, and the bare constitutional provisions per se. But in terms of history, also the current weightage has been reduced. So overall, in these areas like polity and history, the current affairs part is quite small in share.
Okay. Next segment is subject weightage.
So as we can see the distribution, so you could see the 2023 paper to be very predominant in the polity, geography, NCRTs, but this year there is a quite a good mix of all the subjects. So we can see science and tech 16 questions, environment 10 questions, economy 19 question, polity 14 questions, geography 12 questions, history 16 questions, 13 current affairs question. So this is indicative of the fact that everything is being put into test. You cannot have a certain area that you can leave. So here you will require the holistic coverage of each and every subject. So this is the message clearly.
So yes, it was a very well balanced paper in that sense. It was not giving edge to any one particular subject as compared to what happened in the last 2 years. So that is a good news for all of us. Assessing the overall difficulty level, what is your opinion on that?
I would put it moderate to difficult paper. So this is my analysis per se of the difficulty level.
Right, because even if the questions were seemingly easy, they were asked more in depth, especially in subjects like polity, economy, which are more scoring, right? Then what were the sources that helped us?
So in terms of we will see in the subsequent slides also the sources for the polity, history and economy. So the basic NCRTs are still your base books. Your NCRTs, your standard books are very much important, and plus upon them your build up knowledge for the conceptual part, that how you understand those concepts is very much important. So your many questions have been picked up directly from the Tamil Nadu history NCRT, or say Bipin Chandra class 12th NCRT. In geography, a man would agree that there were most of the questions from the NCRT itself. And also the polity, we read Lakshmi Kant, but it was more of an applied basis. Still, if you were to be asked these questions, so you would need that static knowledge. So the basic books and the NCRTs are still, they are very much important.
Now, there are 2 important announcements to be made. First is that now you can attempt the Experience Prelims 2025 by clicking the QR code and by clicking on the link that is available. And through this, you can get to experience the UPSC Prelims examination that just now happened, so that you won't be missing out on anything. And the second thing is, answer keys will soon be out, also again by clicking on the QR code and by clicking the link. So you can avail it directly. Now let's talk about individual sections. We'll be discussing polity, economy and history, and that discussion will be done by Tejaswa sir. So I will now give you the chance to start all this discussion.
So now we will start with the polity. So the important themes that have been asked in this year's papers were the constitutional bodies, statutory bodies, regulatory body, the Lokpal, right? And there were bare constitutional provisions which were being asked, like the scheduled area provision, the provision related to the governor's role and the president powers. Emphasis on the local self-government, because was a question on the Panchayati Raj, anti-defection, parliament, and the executive, and other special provisions, which are like the fifth schedule areas, or the formation or the post-independence consolidation of the states also from the polity part. So there was a question on Article 87, Speaker, anti-defection, and we are talking about the set here A. There are bare constitutional provisions being asked. It was a moderate to difficult question paper, and one thing is very much sure, that the focus has to be given on the core concepts and understanding of the constitutional provisions. Now, as we can see the paper, right? So a brief analysis would be required here. So this question on the ordinance: an ordinance can amend any central act. An ordinance can abridge a fundamental right. An ordinance can come into effect from a back date. Now here, the role of the parliament, whether the parliament is acting as a constituent body or an ordinary lawmaking body, a legislative body, is very important. So if you see under Article 13, I think clause 2, it says that a state shall not make laws which are inconsistent or which abridge the fundamental rights per se. And there the extent of the law has been widened to incorporate the bylaws and the ordinances also. So this probably the second statement becomes incorrect, and therefore you can reach the answer directly. Now this question with reference to the India, these are the bodies and how many of them have been established as per the Constitution of India. Again it is a repeat, because in 2023 or I think 24, you remember there was a question that which one of the following bodies are the constitutional bodies. So this question has been asked, okay, which one of the following have been established as per the provisions of the Constitution, and the answer would be easily, you can see, interstate council. Now here again a very important and important question. The Constitution of India explicitly mentions that in certain spheres the governor of a state acts in his or her discretion. Now here one might think that using the trail words like explicit might get this option as an incorrect one, but the reading of the Article 163 clause 2 is itself an indicative of the fact that there is mentioned explicitly that the governor of a state acts his or her discretion, because under Article 200-356 the governor enjoys the constitutional discretion, and also in spheres it also enjoys the situational discretion per se. And the president of India can reserve a bill by his or her by list without it being forwarded by the governor. That's an incorrect statement. Now this is a very important and an applied question, so here your detailed understanding of the subject will be required. This one is an easy question, like the separation of now earlier they used to write used to be very simple questions relating to the article provisions, like the right to privacy is a part of which article, say article 14, 19, 21. They used to ask such questions, right? But this year they have so they made it more complicated. Now you know separation of the judiciary from executive, article 50, right? So it is a DPSP, valuing and preserving the rich heritage of the composite culture, we know it. And prohibition of the employment of the children below the age, again it is a fundamental right. So a broader question from the easily direct questions which earlier used to be asked, that which one of the following comes under which fundamental right. Then then this is a scheduled area question. There is the National Automotive Board and the Core Board and the National Center for Trade Information. Now this is these both are under the Ministry of the Commerce and Industry. So this is to be done. And here again a very important application based question, because in PYQs amendment to the Constitution under Article 368 by three sorts of majority, which is simple, special, and the special, where you require the half of the ratification of the states. So again a very important and an application area, though you might have studied that you need to know specifically that which of the following will require the list one, which one of the following will require the half of the ratification of the states. So except the conditions of the governor's office, both will require it, right? Next we have again an important question. So Indian polity governor's question: the governor of a state is not answerable to any court for the exercise and performance of the powers and the duties. No criminal proceeding shall be instituted or continued against the governor during his or her term of office, the members of a state legislature are not liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything said within the house. Now, here is a very important things. Like what it is saying, that there are certain classes of people, governor, president, which are which in which Article 14 does not apply. That is equality before law or equal protection of laws. And they are given special privileges which are under various sections of the constitution. Like this is Article 361, no criminal proceedings per se. So here it is again a very intriguing and interesting application of the polity which is being asked over here. And this is how you can approach the questions. And you should know this question: member of state legislatures are not liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything said within the house, Article 105 and 193 under the parliamentary privileges, right? Then this question related to the dissolution of the this is the speaker's question, again a parliament and an important application based area question. Again, see this question, 88th question of the part A. Thing is that here it is saying that if any question arises to whether this is the question under the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which is the 10th schedule. So any question arises as to whether a member of the House of the People has to subject to the disqualification under the 10th schedule, the president decision in accordance with the opinion shall be final. But according to the defection under the 10th schedule, the decision goes to the chairperson of the respective or the presiding officer of that house, right? And there is no mention of the word political party in the Constitution of India. But indeed, through this provision, 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, this provision was being added. Now, the political party is quite mentioned in the 10th schedule, and we can see it in. This is a very important, and both the statements are incorrect, and it is an application-based question. This question: the state governments have no power for making rules for grants of concessions in respect of extraction of the minor minerals, even through such minerals are located in their territories. Now, in India, the central government, so this question is incorrect because minor minerals, the state have their subjects, and even there was a recent Supreme Court judgment on royalty per se, whether the states are given the power. Now they're given the power to tax also, because judgment which was quite in news. And then this statement will be correct, and here you can easily get onto the answer, right? And then these two questions that the panchayats at so this is a local self-government question, which is a very important topic, 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. And you can easily see that panchayats at the intermediate level exist in all states. The first thing is that we know that after the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, a system and where the population 20 lakhs, so there you do not need a second tier per se, the intermediary. So the first statement becomes incorrect. To be eligible to be a member of the panchayat at the intermediate level, a person should attain the age of 30 years. No, that's incorrect, 21 years. And the chief minister of a state constitutes a commission. Again, we know that the state finance commission, which helps in the devolution or the distribution of the nets proceed, has been constituted by the governor. So a easy question related to the application of the Panchayati Raj is required here. Now this is an important question, and this is the question where your understanding and the reading of the Bare Act will also apply. So the power of the Lokpal applies to the public servants of India, but not public servants posted outside India. That's incorrect. Why? Because even if they are Indian public servants, if they're posted abroad, so they are under the government of India, and they will be tested for the corruption and the charges under the Lokpal. So it clearly mentioned that the scope of the act is with respect to the public servants in or outside India in the statutory provision. The chairperson or a member shall not be a member of the parliament, and that's true, by the way. But here it says that only the Chief Justice of India, whether incumbent or retired, has to be its chairperson. So here the word only. So any judge of the Supreme Court can also become. The conditionality is not just a CJI, but any other any judge of the Supreme Court can hold that position. Now, Lokpal, the chairperson, and this is the correct statement, and you can easily go for the third option by elimination. So overall analysis of the polity paper is that it is a quite conceptual paper. it is a moderate and tilting towards the difficult paper in terms when the conceptual knowledge is being tested. Although there are some easy questions like the Panchayati Raj questions, the question relating to the scheduled area or the speaker, the state government making the rules for the minor minerals, and the separation of the judiciary from the executive, the provisions of the constitution, simple provisions, which are the basic provisions, part 3 and part 4 of the constitution, and their mapping. And overall, it is a moderate paper, according to me. Now we will move on to the geography.
So the themes that were asked in geography were the same predictive themes. So as such, geography part was not very difficult, barring some of the few questions where was not working, and even you would require having a thorough mapping knowledge. So those are some of the challenging questions, but I would say majority of the questions are very well doable with the help of conceptual knowledge. So the themes that were broadly asked was applied themes on our earth chapter, which you can very easily do through NCRT. So time zones question was asked, little bit tricky. The question was obviously a little bit tricky, but then there was another question where the IDSL time was asked, whether if you're moving from west to east, so what will happen, whether you will gain a day or you lose a day. So a very basic concept which is given in NCRT also, that was asked. Then there were certain questions continental drift theory, so those were also asked from NCRTs as it is. Then major landforms, again a very important theme. So Andes mountain ranges passes through which of the following country? This was one question that appeared. From climatology, similar kind of questions were asked as compared to last year. So we would find questions where about jet streams question would be there, about drying weather would be asked, where it is more located. So climatology was also fairly easier as compared to the other topics. Then again, places in news was asked. However, a change in trend was observed over here, that the places in news was a little bit tough. However, they can be answered using PYQs, but the places in news were a little bit tougher as compared to the previous year. So I wouldn't recommend you to beat yourself if you are getting or marking these questions incorrect. There was also a prediction that generally in places in news, the conflicted areas are asked more often, but that was also a case which was flouted this year. So you would not find a lot of questions regarding conflicted areas like Russia, Ukraine, etc. Distribution of resources again was asked, a very important theme in geography. So distribution of lithium, distribution of the other minerals that we've been telling, especially the critical minerals, which was a highly predictive theme because it has been asked since 2022. So that was also kept up. And reading NCRTs, of course, was a short solution of solving majority of the questions of geography. Let's try to solve some of them. And before that, let us see what were the focus areas. Most of the questions were actually copy pasted from NCRTs. And this is something that we've observed in last year as well. So NCRT should be a go-to source. Second, what were the repeated themes? So the isotherm question was verbatim taken from the last year's PYQ. And that is why PYQ analysis is of good use. So the same statement was asked, and both the statements are correct in both the years. So isotherm question was asked. Rare earth element distribution, for example, lithium, which was asked in 2022. Cobalt, which was asked in 2024. So these questions were already asked. And again, following the same trend, distribution of rare earth element critical minerals was also asked. Second, distribution of mountain ranges, lakes, a very important theme, and something about the heat budget, an important part of the NCRT and the geography syllabus per se. So that was also asked. Then what were the new trends? So we couldn't find a lot of questions which are based on conflict zones. Places in news was a little tougher one. And we could find a lot of questions which were applied, especially coming from the chapter of Our Earth. Difficulty level, I would say that it was pretty much moderate. It was very much doable because if you had read NCRT, then the question paper would have been very easier for you. Overall remark is that static again remains the key. We need not to collect 500 places in news. They might help us, they might not help us. It is again a very unpredictable space. Talking about some of the questions. So this is about places in news. Here, Normandy and Mallorca was already in PYQ. So anybody who had done the last 10 years of PYQ analysis could have solved this very easily. Sardinia, which is in Italy, Mallorca, which was in Spain, and Normandy, which was in France. This was the correct answer. Then coming to turmeric. So this was again a predicted trend that the cultivation of plantation crops or the important medicinal crops has become an important trend, because they have already asked question on coffee last year, cocoa, tea has been asked, and now sugarcane has been asked, and now turmeric has been asked. So in turmeric, the first statement that India is the largest producer and exporter of turmeric in the world, this is a correct statement. Second, more than 30 varieties of the turmeric are grown in India. If you ask for the source, PIB has exactly written all these three statements. So PIB again would be a good go-to source to prepare for geography current affairs. So all the three statements over here are correct. Next was about two places, one in Siberia, one in Alaska. And so the first statement was correct, whereas the second statement was interchanged. So it was said when there is Monday in the Siberia region, then it will be Tuesday in the Alaska region. However, this is kind of interchanged. So it will be Monday over here and Tuesday. The next day follows up in the eastern part of the hemisphere. Then the next question is about the Andes mountain and how many countries does it pass through. So you only needed to eliminate Paraguay and Bolivia. So had you eliminated these two, you would have got the answer. Then the next one, how many of them equator does not passes? Now also, this is a very basic generic mapping information that we read, how many countries pass through Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and so for equator. This is also something which was repeated in PYQs. Then question on lake was asked. Surprisingly, this was a difficult question. Question was difficult. Why? Because not even a single one passed through equator, some either north of it or south of it. So a depth of mapping knowledge was demanded over here. So it is fine if you skip this question or if you make this question incorrect, completely fine. I believe that this question was a little bit difficult as compared to the other ones. The next question it is on the continental drift and the related evidences, which have been verbatim given in your NCRT. So all of these statements are correct. And then the question on isotherm was asked, something which was exactly asked in last year as well, where isotherms bend towards equator when they are on the continent and bend towards the pole when they are on the oceans. And the reason for this is the specific heat of the ocean and not the temperature of air, whether air is warmer or not. So while second statement is correct, it is not the correct explanation of statement number one. Then the next question was about how many of them have been correctly matched with their resources. So here, some of the most predicted minerals that I already told you to prepare, that was the critical minerals, what are their major producers, and where are they located. Last to last year, the ore of titanium was also asked, rutile and ilmenite, and that was derived from NCRT. So similar lines, this question could have been very easily predicted. Anyway, the answer to this is all of the above. Botswana, diamond; Chile, lithium, we know the ABC triangle, Argentina, Chile. And then Indonesia also has 40% reserves of nickel. So all of them were correct. Now, Tejasvi will be coming back to discuss the economy section.
So we'll move on to the economy section. The major themes in the economy is that the static weightage has increased, and the static has to be prepared from your standard NCRTs first of all, and any other source. Then there is another component which is static derived current. That is there was a question on the there was a debate that the government wants the RBI surplus, and it has been constantly in news for around say 2 to 3 years. So that question being that static derived current is also important. The factual question knowledge has increased because for the first time we are seeing over say in this question, like here, the 15th Finance Commission of India, which one of the following is correct? And here they have said that the 4,800 crores grants. So the factual knowledge per se, they have asked it. But although this question was easy, because we have seen that our terms of reference from the 14th and 15th Finance Commission, here it was like 41%, and one was done because of the J&K being made into the Union Territory. So this was a quite prominent fact, very well in news, and the options were made in such a manner that if you just knew this part, that okay, this is not 45%, so you could have easily eliminated it. But still, I would say the role of the factual knowledge has been increased in the economy. So yes, the national rail plan was being asked. The World Bank reports were being asked, and the weightage of the reports have been also increased. Then a surprising element was the numerical based questions, because earlier the questions relating to the basic monetary policy and the numericals were quite interestingly that okay, on the basis of the monetary supply, the what we study about the M0, M1, narrow money, broad money. But now here they have asked the questions related to the basic calculations. They have given you figures. Okay, these are the total expenditure. This is my receipt which I'm receiving. These are my borrowings. Now calculate the fiscal deficit, calculate the revenue deficit, calculate the primary deficit per se. So such questions have increased. So that is like we see 2 questions this year. Then the capital markets, the absolute questions which you should know, they have been asked. So there was a question relating to the alternative investment funds, because they are asking, okay, which one of the following is in the debt market or the money market instruments. So we should know those instruments. So this time they have asked that which one of the following will be treated as the alternate investment funds. So again, a very absolute basic concepts relating to capital market, and also applied in the sense that it is saying that the RBI mandates all the listed companies to submit a business responsibility and a sustainability report, very prominent in use because of the ESG guidelines also, and therefore we know that this is done by the SEBI. So this is an applied question and a very static question per se. Then we have the public economics as a greater weightage over here, and eventually the infrastructure questions in terms of the national rail plan were being increased, and we see that there is a quite interlinkage between the themes that are being asked in your mains paper and your prelims paper. So it is very important you do not classify them differently, but try to study them holistically, right? So these were the focus areas: taxation, finance, sustainable development, climate, banking systems, the digital banking part, and the role of the RBI has increased. Earlier, there used to be the questions on the types of banks, but this time they have increased the domain they have broadened the domain and asked about the role of the RBI and gone for the digital banking part. Government schemes is a theme which is being repeatedly asked. PM Surya Ghar Yojana. The repeated themes are as the follows. The new trends and surprises again is the numerical kind of the questions. Earlier there used to be just one, and also of a monetary supply in nature. But one theme is which we see is not being asked is the effect of one macroeconomic indicator, for example the interest rate or the inflation, on the other macroeconomic indicator, keeping the other macroeconomic indicators as constant. So there used to be very conceptual questions related to that were particularly being asked in 2022 or before that, where you could where bond yield and its effect on the interest rate, or it's in the appreciation near questions, they have seen a dip down. Now the difficulty level is moderate in terms of the economy, and you need again conceptual clarity and match the recent trends in the GS paper prelims, and the application is quite required. So going through some of the questions, like which one of the following are the sources for the income for the RBI? So that has been asked, and we know that it does not directly lend to the private companies per se. And then the printing and the distribution of the currency notes through seigniorage and buying and selling of the foreign currency and buying and selling government bonds will constitute the income. So that would be the answer. Now here, the organization, some form of its function and its work under. So this is a difficult category question. Then yes, an important trend is that, see this question. You can see a similar question being asked, I think in 2023 or 2024, where there was a question on the capital gains tax and whether the InvITs are exempted from it or not, right? So here the income from aligned agricultural activities like poultry farming and the wool rearing in rural areas is exempted from any tax. Why this question in news? Because there is a constant debate going on even in the parliament whether that we should tax agricultural income or not, right? So this is a question from that side, and you can easily map it to the PYQ, which was being asked whether the capital gains under the InvITs are exempted, and there the answer was they're not exempted. So here also on the similar lines, if one could have thought that, so it can have easily got the answer, because statement 1 would have been incorrect and you would have reached the answer. Now the next, this question was a pretty easy question, the 6th question, that India has joined the MSP Minerals Security Partnership as a member, and India is a resource-rich country in all the 30 critical minerals. So we have notified the 30 critical minerals, right, under our statute, that it has identified. So no, it is not a resource-rich in all the 30 critical minerals, right? So this could have been easily. So such questions are given as a bonus questions, easy questions. So that you are, if you know just one statement, you are easily able to eliminate the statement and get to the right answer. Now, yes, basic knowledge regarding the capital markets. Who are the bond holders? Who are the shareholders? Now, the statement, as regards written from an investment in a company, bondholders are considered to be relatively at a lower risk than the stockholders. It's a basic question of the capital market. So it has been asked and test to the knowledge. Statement 1 is correct, but then if you know that the statement 1 is correct, then you can easily get to 2 and 3. Then circular economy question, quite doable. Yes, basic NCRTs are important, because we have seen in our government budgeting chapter that it is mentioned, they're talking about what constitutes the capital expenditure, what constitutes the capital receipts. So the capital receipts create a liability and cause a reduction in the assets of the government. This is directly marked in the NCRT. And the borrowings and the investments are capital receipts, because one will either, so this investment will cause a reduction in the assets and borrowing will create a liability. So both will be part of the capital receipts, and interest received on loans will not create a liability per se. They will be part of the revenue, right? So that is why the answer would be 1 and 2. And this is directly picked up from NCRT. Yes, so these are the numerical questions which were being asked, where it gives you the data relating to the revenue expenditure, the revenue receipt, and the government budget also shows the borrowings and the interest payments as this. So one should know that how to calculate the fiscal deficit. What is the standard definition given in your NCRT? Your standard definition given in your NCRT says that it's the total revenue expenditure minus the revenue receipts, and which excludes the borrowing. So if you know this definition, you will be able to get to the deficit, and from that, if you subtract from the fiscal deficit, if you subtract your interest payments, then you go to the primary deficit per se. So in an easy question, but a tricky question, because you should know the definition of each revenue, fiscal, primary, which is given in your standard books, and you should apply the knowledge there. Then again, a numerical question could be seen here. The country's fiscal deficit stands at the 50,000 crores. It is receiving 10,000 crores through non-debt creating capital receipts. The country's interest liabilities are 1,500 crores. So what is the gross primary deficit? So your definition of a gross primary deficit, which includes the fiscal deficit minus your interest liability. So and this 10,000 is actually given to confuse you. So this is a static question on the basic definition relating to the Indian budgeting and accounting, which is a part of your 12th class macroeconomics NCRT and the standard stores which you refer to. So I think The economy section per se has been a moderate section, and it was a doable section if you just knew the basics, and you could have easily targeted a good score over here. Moving on to the history section. So this year, as for the past 2 to 3 years, we have seen a dip in the modern India. This year, the modern India has seen a boom in terms of the coverage of the number of the questions in the modern India. So there were 8 questions coming from direct modern India, which were of Gandhian movement, 4 questions, and the socio-religious movements, there were 4 questions, and the weightage of the medieval has shrunken, but your ancient is still dominant in the other aspects. So I think there were total 16 questions, and out of those, you have significant 8 questions from your ancient India, 8 questions, 7 questions from ancient India, and 8 questions from your modern India. Now, covering at the various aspects, the focus areas have been the social religious reforms, 2 questions, Gandhian movement, 4 questions. So you got the question of Ram Mohan Roy. That was a part of the socio-religious movement. Gandhian movements, you were given very specifically. There was a question on whether when the Harijan word, the Gandhiji catered to them. Then there was a question on the sedition per se. When did he famously utter that line? Actually, to a reporter per se. Then there is a focus on the ancient and early medieval part, while the Delhi Sultanate and the period post Delhi Sultanate period is being neglected. So the Gandhian movements per se, non-cooperation, 1920-2022 is being asked. Ashokan inscriptions in terms of the ancient India are a favorite theme of UPSC. Somewhere or along, they could ask a mapping question or a question relating to any inscriptional evidence, because they have asked that, okay, Ashoka's real name was in which inscription, that Ranyo Ashoka, right? This year they have asked, okay, that inscription mentions Pradeshikars, Yuktas, that question which is related to the administrative aspect, because an inscription is an important historical evidence for accounting history, right? Then we know that the current affairs inspired art and culture question were there, and it was just a 1 question. New trends and surprises is that your traditional themes of Buddhism and Jainism have been not asked, and also the Vijayanagar Empire. These 3 themes used to dominate for the past 2 to 3 years. They have been not asked. Then there is not per se a difficult question on the literature. So few question requires your interdisciplinary knowledge. So there is a mapping question where you are given the rivers and you are given the regions. So they are not chronologically on a same time period that you can find it. But yes, if you combine the 2 periods, you can get to the mapping aspect of those questions. The difficulty level of the history paper has been from easy to moderate. 10 out of the 16 questions are directly from the NCRTs, from the old and the new, and the Tamil Nadu government book, that the Tamil Nadu book and the yellow books which we study are very important. And the Bipin Chandra NCRT for the modern is the classic case, because every statement has been picked up from that. So the overall remark is that you must take care of the basic resources and revise the NCRT, running after the lengthy sources. Like people mentioned that there are more. Earlier there used to be bulky books have come up in the market regarding the history preparation. You can find some PYQs being referred to Upendra Singh, but we know, if we know the cost benefit analysis, we can easily deduct that our basic sources like Bipin Chandra NCRT of 11th 12th, and then the our old NCRTs and the Tamil Nadu book, if we would have revised them multiple times, we could have easily scored here. And therefore, the difficulty level of this paper in terms of the history section is easy to moderate. Looking at some of the few questions. So this Rajaram Mohan Roy question, standard question, basic question, where it has asked, he possessed great love and respect for the traditional philosophical systems of the East. East is covering our area also. So that incorporates the Buddhism aspect and the Hinduism. So he would have a respect, and he desired his countrymen to accept the rational and the scientific temperament, and that is obviously true. So both the statements are correct. Now here, so if you would have observed that in regard to the non-cooperation program, retention of the titles, one would actually give up the titles. So this is an easy question per se. If you just eliminate the third statement, you would have got to the answer. Then this is quite an easy question. The famous travelers. The theme of the travelers is quite prominent, because sometimes you can get, okay, what were the major works done under what were, for example, Bernier said about this kingdom that there is a whole lot of advancement in terms of the science and technology. So if a traveler comes, it gives an historical account. So this is a famous traveler. There is not much difficulty in this question. Chandragupta will be the correct answer in terms of, because it is quite famous. The Hyun Fahim, right? Then this is a direct PYQ. Aragat. This is a Persian wheel, and this was asked in the previous year. And here you can see only one option carrying the wheel option. So this is a direct PYQ. So these such questions are making the history section this year quite on a easy to moderate level. And important expeditions, we know that Cholas are renowned to have such expeditions covering the Malay Peninsula. So this is a famous question, and they have not even confused you regarding the various Chola rulers, the kings also. Like they have given you Raja 1, or say Rajendra or the Pranakta. So they have just mentioned Rajendra 1 from the Chola dynasty, and you could have easily done it. Now, this question is a little tricky question, because here the territorial region and the rivers in those have been asked. So if one would have identified that the Cambodge is quite to the north, and the map is given in the Tamil Nadu NCRT also, Tamil Nadu old book, and passes actually the Bias river. So it is interlinking your Rigveda and the Mahajanapada period, right? Because in we study the traditional names of the Parushini, the Ravi river in our Rigveda period, but we then see the Mahajanapada and they're in the later Vedic period. So this is an interlinkage. So Avanti is incorrect, because if you will see in the map, the Mahanadi and the Avanti, they are quite distant. So here the answer will be only 2. Then yes, this question from the Ashokan inscriptions, the Pradeshika, Rajuka and Yukta. So this is again mentioned in your Tamil Nadu Tamil Nadu book, where they are talking about the district level administration. That Pradeshika is the district level officer, Yukta is a subordinate officer to the district. So these are the important offices at the district level. Again, a standard question from the Bipin Chandra NCRT relating to the Gandhian movement and on the non-cooperation per se. So, and this is Indus Valley civilization. The question is direct. Dancing girl at Mohenjo-daro. We obviously know that this is a bronze statue over there. So this is the figurine is made up of the bronze material. So easy question. This is a tough question, because you would not find the legal defense to the people arrested in the aftermath of Chori Chora incident. So this is a tough question. But this question, subsequent to which one of the following events Gandhiji, who consistently opposed untouchability and appealed for its eradication from all the spheres, decided to include the upliftment of Harijans in his political and the social program? Looking at the options, one can easily get that it will be the Pune Pact. So here I can see that this history, I can conclude by saying that history has been on an easy to moderate question level, where there were only a few 1 to 2 difficult questions which were difficult to predict also and get the answer to. So now ma'am will be taking the environment section.
Okay, so we are already done with the 4 major sections. Now we'll be analyzing the environment section in science and technology, which by the way moderated the difficulty level, which came after the polity sections and the economy sections, which are more in-depth and applied in nature. The good news for environment and science and tech is that they actually incorporated a lot of eliminations into them. So the question, even if it was seemingly difficult, it could be very easily concluded by simple eliminations. Talking about the important themes that were asked, they were dominated by current affairs. Most of them were highly predictive in nature, especially in science and technology. We'll be discussing that later. From environment point of view, climate change, related conventions, Article 6, some of the very basic things that we get taught in our static classes was asked. Then we could see a lot of applied techniques with respect to climate, with respect to carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. So these things, which were highly predictive, those were asked. So this paper was very manageable. Repeated themes: Paris Agreement, United Nations Framework for Climate Change, and carbon sequestration. These have been repeated since last 5 years. So again, it made the paper easier. Elimination techniques were useful and good for us that the environment section focused much less on the concepts, much less on the facts. So I would say that the difficulty level of environment was very much moderated. So I would say it would move between easy to moderate. It was not going towards the difficult section. Most of the questions were mostly from current affairs and from the very basic websites as well. However, basic current affair would have helped you thoroughly over here. So for example, questions which are commonsensical could have made your answer deciphering very easier. So for example, how many of them contains plastic? Now it is very difficult for us to flout even one of them, that they wouldn't be containing plastic in one form or the other. So the answer for this is all of the above. So this is something that we learn as a code, right? Now the next one is about activated carbon. And what it is telling me, first of all, activated carbon was pretty much in news because of plethora of applications. And second, activated carbon is good and attractive tool to remove the pollutants. So this statement as such was correct. The second statement, which told us that it exhibited a large surface area, let me zoom in, that it exhibited a large surface area and a strong potential for absorbing the heavy metal, not absorbing but absorbing the heavy metals. This is one of the prominent reason as to why we consider it as a thing which can trap the pollutant, and therefore it helps us in addressing the problem of pollution. Statement number 3 is activated carbon can be easily synthesized from environmental waste with high carbon content. This is a statement which gives us a gist of possibility. Can be is used over here. So obviously, as such, all the 3 statements are correct. And in fact, if we move to the options, we can very easily decipher that both the statements are actually the correct explanation of statement number 1, right? Moving to the next question. This was little factual, but the options made it very easier to decipher this question. So for example, the question told me that this is something about the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, and that India has refrained from signing some declaration. What could be the reason behind this was given in the statement number 3. So if you will read the statement number 3 carefully, you would understand that because it is justifying that if the entire health sector is decarbonized, that would be a tectonic change. And therefore, it will definitely compromise with the resilience of our healthcare systems. So because of statement number 3, statement number 1 would be correct. But you could very easily come to the right answer with the help of statement number 2, where it is telling me that it is binding in nature. A lot many times statements like these go very extreme, that conventions are binding in nature. So if you would have eliminated this binding statement, you would have ultimately come to the right answer. So that actually the option creation made the answer very easier, right? Moving to the next one, this is about Article 6, something that we generally read in our basic books of environment. So Article 6 is about climate financing. So statement number 1 was suiting it, statement number 2 was suiting it, statement number 3 was also suiting it. Now you might get confused about the non-market aspect, but it is actually correct because it is given under Article 6.4. So therefore, statement number 3 was correct as well. All the 3 statements were correct, and it was the correct explanation of the first one. Next, the Nature Solutions Finance Hub for Asia Pacific. For Asia Pacific. Now, this question, I would say that this question added on to the difficulty because this is not a very regular report that we read, right? The correct answer for this, however, was ADB, Asian Development Bank. And you could figure out with the help of which of the following is most active in the Asia Pacific region. So that knowledge, that common sense would have helped you here. However, if you take the risk of leaving this question, that is also fine because this was little unpredictable. Moving on to the next question. Next question. And before moving to this question, I would also like to tell you again that the answer keys have got uploaded on our portal, and you can access it via scanning the QR code or clicking on the link below. Along with that, if you are interested, you can also experience the real-time UPSC Prelims 2025 at your homes by again scanning the QR code, which would give you the access to take the exact test in the real-time environment through your home. Moving to the next question, this is about direct air capture. This technology, as such, is pertaining to the CCUS, the carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology. And this was in news because of decarbonization of aviation sector that we were all talking about. So when you will move towards one statement and the other, you will get to know that all of them are eventually talking about the CCUS and how it can lead to creation of plastic as well, how it can be a source of carbon for combining with hydrogen. So these are the statements of possibility, which is very hard to be negated. And therefore, the answer to this is all of the above. All of the above is the correct answer. Now, next question is about the carbon dioxide emissions. Now, in a time where we all are fighting with each other about carbon equity, we all know that the pollution level, the greenhouse gas emissions are very, very high. In that scenario, if a statement comes to me and says that carbon dioxide emission in India less than 0.5, then obviously that would be a controversial fact. It has already breached that level 5 years ago. Right now, it would be somewhere about 0.9. So first statement can be eliminated. And the moment you eliminate this fact, because the other things were very generic. In fact, if you eliminate the first statement, you will ultimately understand that second is correct. So now I have to see whether third is correct or not. So let me assess statement number 3. That electricity and heat producers are the largest sources of carbon dioxide emissions in India. The coal power plants of India are the largest emitters of carbon dioxide. So this statement is also correct. Next question. And this question again was a little difficult one. Why? Because it asked for more technical words that was expected from UPSC. So for example, cassava we predicted that it will be asked because it was in news. Cassava, whose major producer is Nigeria, was seeing some turbulence, and therefore the cassava production got declined up to 80% over there. So that was a problem going on. But anyway, cassava was in news. It is a woody shrub. This is correct. Second, ginger. Ginger is a pseudostem. This one is also correct. Malabar spinach. While you will feel that it is a shrub, it is actually a vine which grows in the form of climbers. Lesser of you would be knowing it. So it is absolutely fine if you decide to skip this question. Or you can also take a leap of faith over here by marking any two of them. But eventually, I would say my judgment would be that this question as such was very difficult because this was a climber. So yes, it was a climber. Mint was not an annual shrub. It was a perennial shrub. But it is not expected that we people who study generally for, the general studies aspect of environment would be knowing the difference between annual, perennial, biennial, etc. But this was a perennial shrub. So in that case, this one was incorrect. Papaya, of course, is not a woody shrub. So that is also incorrect. So therefore, the correct answer would be 3. Only 3. Now the next question, again, where elimination helped me a lot. And this is something which is taking cue from the previous year question paper where the concentration of oxygen was asked. And this is something which comes in convergence of 2 subjects, which is environment and geography. So the first one is that rainforests produce more oxygen than produced by the oceans. Think about the percentage of land that has forest in it, and think about the percentage of land which is occupied by the oceans. So of course oceans would dominate. The phytoplankton, zooplanktons would dominate, and therefore this statement can very easily be negated. So the moment you cut down on this statement, the moment you eliminate 1, 2 and 1 and 3, because we are eliminating statement number 1, we will move to only 2. Let us also check whether second is correct or not. So it is saying marine phytoplanktons and photosynthetic bacteria produce about 50% of the world's oxygen. So when we were reading about how oxygen actually got into our atmosphere in the percentage that it is today, we would know that majority of it is actually contributed by the vast oceanic resources, especially that of phytoplanktons. So this statement is correct, so the answer becomes 2 only. Next is science and tech. Again, a very good news that the topics, the themes were very much predictive. They were asking about emerging technologies. In fact, not just emerging technology, but technologies like UAV or the other technologies, which were also, by the way, used in environment. So there was a convergence of environment and science and technology, which was observed this year. And secondly, a lot of questions were asked on electric fuel cells, electric vehicles, which was also, by the way, asked in last year. So about fuel cell question was asked. So this year electric vehicle question was asked. About it batteries, the question was asked. So how could I solve these questions? One, by reading the current affair and associate a little bit of scientific concepts with those current affairs. So again, current affair dominated in this paper, and let us see how to solve them. Before that, let us understand a quick analysis of it. So there were questions on battery technology, drone usage, plastic, defense, aircraft. And in defense, we were asked about explosives. We were asked about the aircrafts. Both the technologies were asked. Quantum computing was asked again. Biotechnology and basics, for example, monoclonal antibodies was asked, and this was also a repeated trend. Then environmental technology, for example, last year membrane bioreactor was asked. So this year also CCUS technologies were asked. Then emerging technologies, IT communications, space missions, and the Gagan mission. These were the things which made headlines in this year's paper of science and technology. Now, talking about the new trends or the surprising trend, I would say that uh, as we see more convergence between environment and technology and the science and technology, so I would say that the technologies which are of more environmental and social use could be an emerging trend in the upcoming paper. So we should be prepared for that. So because this is something, this convergence trend was observed. Of course, talking about the difficulty level, I would say it will move between easy to difficult level. The reason for this is some of the questions were easily eliminatable, while the other were a little more conceptual. And there were about 19 questions that were asked from this section. So that made this section a little bit more moderate. Now, moving to the first question, how many of the above space missions given encourage and support? So please highlight and put your focus towards these words. Encourage and support doesn't mean that at present they have technologies which are supporting microgravity research, but in future they could be facilitators of the same. But facilitator could be anything. For example, the SpaceX mission, the docking mission that India has. For example, Gaganyaan. For example, Axiom. So all of them is the correct answer over here. The next question is about electric vehicles. So there were two questions. In set number B, you could see question number 1 on electric vehicles, the kind of different batteries which could be used, the answer for which was all of the above. And the second question was about the type of battery cathodes which could be used here. Clubbing the common ones would have helped you. So for example, we famously know that graphite is an anode. Graphite is an anode. On the other hand, graphite, it is made up of carbon, belongs to p block element. So obviously, this is having a completely different nature as compared to cobalt and lithium and nickel. Cobalt and nickel, by the way, are transition elements, but they have metallic properties. Lithium has metallic properties. So we can actually club all the elements together which have got chemical properties, the S block elements and the D block elements. So here we would find, after clubbing them, that only 3 would be the right answer. All right, next. Again, I have told you that powertrain, alternative powertrain vehicles, how many type of vehicles could be used over there? So all of the above is the correct one, because there is no reason for us to negate either of them. So we would go for all of them. It is application based question, typical questions which go correct and which you should not be negating in the examination in order to take care of your cutoff range. Next is about the UAVs. All the 3 statements where I see whether all types of UAVs can do vertical landing, or they can do automated hovering, or they could use battery which as the only source of power supply, all of them intrinsically are very extreme statements. So without overthinking and over analyzing about it, we will go about eliminating all of them. So the correct answer would be none. Then the next question. So do you remember in the year of 2020, there was a question where things like no snakes are venomous, or let's say some statements like no butterflies are venomous, these could be asked. So these are extreme statements. Again, similar question, similar format was replicated in this question as well, where no virus can survive in ocean, no virus can infect bacteria, no virus can change the cellular transcriptional activity. And this was a very similar question that was asked in last year as well, if you could remember, if you've done the PYQ analysis. So again, all of them are extreme, so none of them are correct. Got it? Next is the artificial way of causing rainfall to reduce air pollution makes use of which of the following? So this is a classic example of cloud seeding, artificial rain. Again, something which has been previously asked by the examiner. So the correct answer is silver iodide and potassium iodide. Option number A is the correct answer. Okay. Next question is about rare earth elements. Now let us see how simple this question was. That some rare earth elements are used in the manufacturing of electronic devices. Rare earth element would obviously include lithium, cobalt, etc. And they could find use in electronic devices, electrical devices. So there's no reason for me to negate the statement number one. And second says that they have phosphorescent properties. Because they have the layer of phosphorus, they have the property of luminescence the moment electrons trigger upon them. So obviously, because of second, first statement would find the application. So both the statements are correct, and statement number 2 explains statement number 1. The next question is about a technology which is used and for basically for the Indian railways, for the railway systems. And why this was in news? Because last year a lot of train accidents happened. You remember the Balasore train accident? So similarly, various train accidents were in news, and similarly associated technology was in news. A very famous one which was in news, covered in analyst as well, was the covered system. So covered system, we all know that it is an indigenously created system. So obviously second statement would be incorrect. Do you agree? Do you agree that it is not made in collaboration with Germany, but it is an indigenous system? So the moment I eliminate option number 2, I will come to C, which is 1 and 3. And this is the correct answer. Okay, next. Look at the other interesting question, which again was from the convergence of environment, geography, and science and tech. Studies indicate that carbon dioxide emissions from cement industry account for more than 5% of the global carbon emissions. Highly likely that it could be a polluting industry, it could be releasing carbon as a byproduct. Statement number 2 says that silica bearing clay is mixed with limestone while manufacturing cement. As it is, this statement is correct. By the very fact this statement is correct, but to say that this is responsible for carbon dioxide emission is a little controversial. The reason for this is, here we are doing mechanical mixing, and that would not lead to creation of that much amount of carbon dioxide as compared to an industrial process which is mentioned in statement number 3, which is the process of clinker production. So that would be leading to creation of a lot of carbon dioxide, because as you see, limestone is getting converted into lime. So the moment it is getting converted into lime, the byproduct would be CO2 and a good amount of it. And because this is produced in large scale, so this statement would have the correct explanation of 1, but not the second one. So therefore, only one of them have the correct explanation of statement number 1. Okay. Next question is about monoclonal antibodies, something which you could find in Recitals magazine. So this was in news. They are man-made proteins. This is correct. Second statement was also correct. You might get confused in the third statement. That they are used in treating viral infections like that of Nipah virus. So as such, they are being used for Nipah virus or not, it is still undergoing experimentation. But because they are using the word like that of Nipah virus, so they could be used for a lot of virus that comes into the same bracket. So therefore, there's no reason for us to negate statement number 3. By that virtue, all of them are correct. Got it? Next question again was featured in Recitals magazine. Something was there in news a lot. This is about the quantum computing chip by Microsoft. So where it is saying that the Majorana 1 chip has been introduced by AWS, Amazon Web Services. This is absolutely incorrect. It was created by, see, either they would write Amazon or they would write Microsoft or some tech giant. Why would they take the name of Amazon Web Services? So by that nature, I would negate statement number 2, and the moment I do it, by the virtue of elimination, I'll get the right answer. Next question, we have already discussed about the activated carbon. So these were the questions, prominent questions that we have discovered from the big 6 sections for you. There were some other miscellaneous questions as well. For example, the question on chess, the question on Kho, there were questions on defense. So these were the questions that you could easily solve using current affairs. So would you like to express your thoughts on how the paper was?
So as we have given you a detailed analysis of the major 6 subjects: polity, economy, geography, science and tech, environment, and history. So I would say that the paper was, it could be said that as compared to 2023, it was little bit difficult because of the conceptual analysis, because last year polity, very direct questions, geography quite from NCRTs, but this year we saw a lot of application based also. So it is tilting towards moderate to difficult only.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even if some questions were easier, but the other questions were really, from the surface, they came out to be easier ones, but I believe that they required more in-depth knowledge. So what do you think will be the cutoff?
So I would say the cutoff would be on the similar lines of 2024. It would be 86 plus minus 4. I would suggest that.
I would say it would be 92 plus minus 5.
Okay.
But let us see what comes out to be the cutoff. Students, you can obviously download the answer key by scanning the QR code and by clicking on the link below. So thank you so much for attending this session. I hope it has given you good insights as to how to solve this paper, how this paper was, and how you can be better prepared if you are willing to give it the next year. So thank you so much, everyone.
So thank you, everybody, and all the best for your future endeavors.
And all the best for your
mains also.